What if Qui-Gon joined the Jedi Council? Let's begin today's story on Naboo, where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan face off against Darth Maul. We all know how this duel goes. Maul gets the upper hand on Qui-Gon, leading to his death, which sets Obi-Wan into a state of anger and determination, where he avenged his master. But let's say in this story, Maul isn't able to kill Qui-Gon in time. The ray shield would open, allowing Obi-Wan to rejoin the battle, and together, the master and apprentice kill the Sith. They return to Coruscant, where the entire council is extremely delighted. The operation couldn't have gone better. After the session, as Qui-Gon heads back to his quarters, Windu and Yoda would summon him into a private session. The Jedi Masters would ask Qui-Gon to join the Jedi Council. Now this is probably the 5th time in his life he has been asked, and each previous time he has rejected this offer, always saying that he and the council's view don't align. When he gave that same response, Windu and Yoda didn't accept it. They recognized his wisdom and strength, and the council would benefit deeply from his inclusion. Yoda asked Qui-Gon what they could do to support him in joining the council. Qui-Gon wouldn't hold back in the situation and give it to them straight. He told him that he believed the Jedi Order had changed, and now they were too rigid and dogmatic and weren't simply following the will of the Force, but instead relied on politics and outside points of view. Yoda thought for a moment. He asked if this had anything to do with young Skywalker. Qui-Gon nodded, but also said that he had felt like this for a long time, long before he met Anakin, but meeting Anakin only confirmed how he felt. He reminded them that Anakin was brought to him by the Force. Without letting the Force guide him, he would never have found the Chosen One. But because the boy is slightly older than usual, the dogmatic, narrow views of the entire council will prohibit the boy who is prophesied to save the entire Republic from being trained. It is not fair. Yoda agrees with Qui-Gon and explains the council has decided to grant him permission to train the boy. Qui-Gon nods, thanking the masters but also reminding them that they have to take on board his ideas, knowing that most of the time he will get outvoted by the council. They agree, and Anakin Skywalker joins the Jedi Order, becoming Qui-Gon Jinn's apprentice. With Qui-Gon surviving and joining the council, Count Dooku stayed in the Jedi Order. This is because the event that pushed him over the edge was Qui-Gon's death, and this coupled with the fact that Qui-Gon was now on the council, he believed that the future was bright. He even joked to Qui-Gon after the announcement of his new position that perhaps in the future, Dooku would rejoin the council. From here, Qui-Gon would begin Anakin's training. Knowing that Anakin was the Chosen One, Qui-Gon would be very cautious when training him. He noticed how easily things came to Anakin. He picked up basic abilities fast, and he was catching up to children his own age who had been training for years exceptionally quickly. Qui-Gon wasn't like other Jedi in this era. He knew the value of attachments and followed the will of the Force instead of power. This is why he was often at odds with the council, a notion that would be tested with his acceptance to join the 12 Masters. Anakin and Qui-Gon would sit beneath the Coruscant stars like they did on Tatooine months earlier. Master Jin imparted wisdom about the Force, detailing his connection to all living things. Anakin loved hearing stories about the Force from Qui-Gon. He always knew a way to make it interesting. Qui-Gon revealed the interactions of the Force to Anakin, teaching him to sense its flow and trust its guidance, unlocking a raw, untamed power within young Skywalker that hinted at great potential. Qui-Gon waited before training Anakin with a lightsaber, believing that the saber was only an extension of the Jedi's strength, and therefore, it was the last step of his training. Once Anakin was at balance between himself and could follow the Force, would he receive a lightsaber? Anakin practices for weeks and months upon end. He swiftly grasped the Force's fundamental principles, honing his abilities and growing into a remarkably powerful and innovative Force-sensitive being. Dooku would often visit Qui-Gon and Anakin, always excited to see the progress that the young boy had made. Dooku reminisced about his time as Jin's master, back when the boy was only a teenager and figuring out his way in the universe. Anakin was growing to become a formidable Jedi, and when Qui-Gon believed it was time to learn how to wield a lightsaber, he and Dooku would help him. Dooku was considered the best duelist in the Order at this point, specializing in Form 2 and holding a strong level of power. Anakin would primarily train under Qui-Gon of course, but there were times when Dooku would give lessons and advice. Anakin and Qui-Gon would go on missions together, practicing diplomacy and strength. Qui-Gon was a fan of letting Anakin make a lot of discussions on missions, so that regardless of the outcome, he was able to learn to take accountability. Sometimes he would choose correctly, and other times he would have to think long and hard about what to do next. But this allowed Anakin to grow and become a wiser Jedi. Dooku was sometimes sent to accompany them on operations throughout the Republic, and he loved their company. Dooku was in touch with his emotions compared to any other Jedi in the Order. He often focused on how he felt as a basis of whether he was being successful, whereas other Jedi pride themselves on their power or the Force. Eventually, Anakin would reach 18 years of age and he was an extremely powerful Jedi. Qui-Gon had taught him to maintain control over his emotions and to follow the will of the Force. His powers were far greater at this age than they were compared to Obi-Wan when he trained him, and Anakin was well on his way to unlocking his true Chosen One abilities. As for Palpatine, he needs a new plan. He couldn't get close to Anakin. The reason he was able to manipulate the boy in the original timeline is because he presented himself as a father figure to Anakin. But now, Qui-Gon has survived and fills that role. This means that the Sith Lord needed a new way of conquering the galaxy. He goes to Ryloth in search of a new apprentice. He desires someone with the ambition of a true Sith and the drive to commit complete chaos. It is on Ryloth where he finds a young beautiful Lethan Twi'lek named Talon. He senses an immense amount of Force power within her and he decides that she will be the perfect apprentice. Killing her parents and taking her away from her home, he begins to train her. Palpatine instructed her as he was taught by his master Plagueis with sheer pain and suffering. She was taken all across the galaxy, beaten to a pulp and the dark side awakened within her. It was brutal and painful, but she grew. Her resolve and resilience increased and it got to a point where she was able to fight back, confirming to Palpatine that he had chosen the correct individual. She was equipped with a double-bladed red lightsaber and she knew various Force powers such as Sith Lightning. She was a powerful adversary and Sidious knew that he had trained her well. It was now time to commence the next stage of his grand plan. His trump card was still Order 66. Him not having Anakin didn't change much. Palpatine didn't believe that Anakin was needed for Order 66 to work at the Jedi Temple. He believed that no Jedi would survive the slaughter with quite literally hundreds of thousands of clones killing everyone. Not even Yoda would survive. He was only disappointed because Anakin held the correct characteristics to be a powerful apprentice. Nevertheless, Palpatine begins the Clone Wars and chaos reigns across the galaxy. Darth Talon would be thrown into combat. From the beginning, she was a very successful, winning many campaigns. The chance of the Separatists winning the battle with her was very strong compared to if she weren't there. She killed many Jedi across the war, ages ranging from young Padawans to some of the most experienced, such as Kit Fisto. She was ruthless, and her zero care for life forms demonstrated this. Anakin and Qui-Gon became revered amongst the Separatists and hailed as heroes throughout the Republic. Their reputation was extremely strong, and people believed them to be the best of the Jedi. Despite the Republic's views of the Order dwindling, they loved these Jedi. Fighting with charisma and style was delivering the most successful results. Qui-Gon didn't believe in the fighting. He thought that sending millions of clones into battle would only prolong the conflict, especially considering there was no end in sight, with both sides winning because the clones were genetically created and the droids factory created. There would always be an abundance of troops and therefore never-ending warfare. But Jin and Skywalker did as best as they could, always fighting for the people and to save lives. They followed the Force. Qui-Gon became a complete nuisance on the council during the war, always making his opinions known and usually everyone disagreed with him. From the beginning of the war, Qui-Gon thought that the Jedi were turning into soldiers and not peacekeepers. Palpatine came to realize that he could use this to his advantage. He orchestrated a conflict where the Separatists are trying to get Takodana to join their cause. This was a common occurrence, but Takodana, which had recently elected to stay neutral, held many fantastic trade routes which would be transporting troops and supplies essential to the war effort. This meant that the Jedi Council was discussing sending a Republic fleet with Jedi and clones to destroy the Separatist presence on the planet, and therefore making a statement to Takodana that they should join the Republic. However, Qui-Gon absolutely hated this idea, believing it went against the very code and essence of the Jedi. They are not soldiers, he tried to explain to the Council, but instead, peacekeepers. They tried to argue back with him, but he refused to listen to what they had to say. He requests for him and Anakin to go back to the planet alone without any fighting in order to negotiate with them. He assures them that simple peacekeeping will resolve this issue. The council is split, but ultimately allow this, with Yoda reminding Windu of the promise they made to Qui-Gon when he joined the council. This worked perfectly into Palpatine's plan, and now he could execute Order 66 with them off-world. This means that when they arrive on the planet, Palpatine executes Order 66 and purges the Jedi. Hundreds of thousands of clones go to the temple. In this story, Sidious would accompany them to ensure everything went according to plan, but he didn't do much, just sat back and watched Jedi die. With the help of thousands of clones shooting from either side, he was able to kill Windu and rid the galaxy of the dogmatic Jedi Order. On Takodana, Darth Talon was waiting for the Jedi to arrive, receiving alerts from Sidious that the temple had been destroyed and clones all around the galaxy had defeated their Jedi generals. Her job is to kill Qui-Gon and Anakin. When the Jedi get off the ship, they are greeted by her as she ignites her lightsaber. She attacks them, wielding her blade with ferocity and power. But Qui-Gon fought back, using his experience and simplistic fighting style to gain the upper hand. He relied on his basics, he didn't do anything fancy and simply followed what the Force told him to do. On the other hand, Anakin was swinging like a mad dog, trying to find his way through her defenses. She was spinning acrobatically and clashing them both with a double-bladed lightsaber. But Qui-Gon recognized her strength, similar to that of Maul, and told Anakin to follow him. They engage from either side, each using their own styles, and they combine their strength and kill her. With their death, they could sense thousands of Jedi falling throughout the Force, crying out in pain. Qui-Gon had to take a seat as he figured out what to do. They get a comlink call from Dooku, who tells them that the Jedi Temple has fallen and that Chancellor Palpatine is the Sith Lord. Anakin and Qui-Gon are completely shocked and tell Dooku that they need to meet back with him on the Republic capital planet. They travel back to Coruscant immediately, knowing that if they don't defeat Palpatine now, the galaxy will be subjected to a lifetime of pain. Meeting up with Dooku, they fly past the Jedi Temple, seeing the flames and fallen statues. Everyone in the shuttle felt pain in their chest, but they had to focus. They marched into the Chancellor's office, who scolded at their entrance. Anakin mentioned how his apprentice pays her respect, although he probably won't be hearing from her anytime soon. Sidious laughed, he didn't need her, the Jedi are dead and the galaxy is his. The three Jedi attack Palpatine, fighting with all of their might. Sidious lead from all sides of the room, he was like a blur, leaping around and screaming with hatred. Dooku relied on his one-handed grip, swinging with great accuracy. Anakin was the most powerful next to Sidious, and he had reached a new level of power never seen before in the Jedi. It was clear that Sidious was losing, and in the back of his mind, he didn't think that he could beat Anakin if he was by himself, let alone surrounded by two Jedi Masters. The Dark Lord noticed Qui-Gon was the weakest and prioritized him, getting closer and closer. As he broke through his defenses, Dooku could see his old apprentice about to get stabbed. The Jedi Master leaps forward and places his body in front of the Crimson Blade, saving his apprentice but losing his life in the process. Dooku was dead. But this gave Anakin an opportunity to attack from the side, leaping forward with speed and slicing Sidious's head from his body. Qui-Gon dropped to his knees and cried at his master's death. Anakin didn't know what to think or what to expect moving forward. They travel to the Jedi Temple where they see bodies of thousands of Jedi. Standing in the entrance to the archives was Yoda on his knees. He was still alive, having returned from Kashyyyk in complete shock. Anakin tells Yoda that Palpatine and Talon are dead. Yoda says they must act quickly. Going to the Senate, Yoda explains what has happened with evidence to support this claim. Palpatine was the Sith Lord and played both sides of the war. The Jedi were victims. The Security Council would take control of the Senate, and Bail Organa as their leader stops the clones from pursuing Order 66. The remaining Jedi eventually made their way to Coruscant, but there weren't many of them. They were a shell of what they once were. Yoda explains that they can rebuild, and from that day, they clean up the temple and try to move on from this horrifying experience. In the end, Qui-Gon was right. The Jedi Order had gone in the wrong direction and become too focused on politics. Yoda assured Master Jin that this new order wouldn't be as rigid, and he asked Qui-Gon to become Grand Master, taking Yoda's place. Yoda didn't feel that he was fit to lead anymore after failing his previous order. Qui-Gon would take this role with grace, and with Anakin's help, they began to rebuild the Order to its former glory, changing and adapting the code when necessary, but ensuring that they followed the will of the Force. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch what if Anakin spoke to Qui-Gon in Revenge of the Sith, and what if Darth Vader was at Padme's funeral. Please check out our membership page if you would like to support the channel, it really helps us out. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.